Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. It is Saturday, which means we are doing our last video of the week. We're going over start or sit. We're going to talk about players who may have adjusted based on injury or other news earlier on in the week. We are going to run through some of those specific players and talk about their situations. And then at the end of this video, I'm also going to give you guys start-sit advice based on tiers of which players I like in what order to help you make the best decisions possible for your fantasy lineups. I do all of these points based on half-point PPR leagues, and if you are in the same tier as far as a running back or a wide receiver, and you're trying to figure out who to play, like in your flex spot, I more often than not lean towards the running back. If you are new, if you haven't done it yet, please like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate your support. It allows me to do what I love so I can continue to bring you content that you love. That's out of the way. Let's get into this week's Start Sit. First group of players that I want to touch on are the Atlanta Falcons pass catchers. Earlier in the week, we got news that Calvin Ridley is going to sit due to personal reasons. I'm not going to speculate on what that means, but what I will tell you is that makes Cordero Patterson, Olamide Zaccheaus, and Kyle Pitts all a little more intriguing. They all get a boost because someone's got to catch balls in the Atlanta offense. Now, the Jets do have the third best pass defense in the entire NFL. So there is certainly risk here, but someone is going to put up points and it's going to be between one of those three guys. Next up, I want to touch on the impact of George Kittle being doubtful and most likely missing this game for the 49ers. Now, obviously, Deebo Samuel is a must start this week. He was before this news, but he gets a little bit of a boost as he's going to get funneled more targets. I think Brandon Ayuk might become a sneaky low-end flex play. There's certainly risk there with him as he hasn't done much yet, but they both get a quarterback upgrade in addition to this loss of Kittle as Trey Lance is set to make his first NFL start. The Cardinals allow the fifth most points to wide receivers, and for Kittle, I think even if he plays at this point, we are not sure what percentage he's going to be, probably closer to 75 than he is to 100, and I would find another option for owners there. Now I want to move to A.J. Brown very quickly, and we know Julio now is not going to play against Jacksonville. This makes A.J. Brown a must start against this horrific defense. He moved from that kind of mid wide receiver 2 range to you are starting him in that top 12 of wide receivers. Next up is a player that I initially had off of our list completely, but it looks like he's likely to suit up, and that's Joe Mixon. He gets a Green Bay defense allowing 23 points a game to running backs. If he does play, I would slide him right behind a player like Antonio Gibson, and Samaje Perine would instantly be relegated to your benches. It's good news all around in Cincinnati as T. Higgins not only has been cleared to play, but he is also now without an injury designation for this Sunday. This is bad news for Tyler Boyd owners. I think he slides down now to a low flex play. However, Higgins jumps all the way up into that wide receiver 2 range. I like him as much as players like Deontay Johnson and Antonio Brown. I don't think this hurts Jamar Chase at all, and you are starting him as a top 12 play. We're now going to move to the Bears pass catchers in Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney. And what do you know? The media riot wins. Matt Nagy finally conceded to the deafening cries of everyone calling for Fields to start. Hopefully Fields is as successful as the bullying to give him the job was. I think that this gives a little bit of stock up to both of these wide receivers as this is a quarterback upgrade. Now, while the stock is up, they're still both low-end flexes, and you're probably not rushing them into your lineup unless you are devoid of other options. Chase Edmonds failed to practice all week and is going to be a true game time decision. He is rapidly shooting down our boards, and my comfortability starting him has declined significantly. I think he moves now more towards that low-end flex play. If Edmonds doesn't play, James Conner shoots up into that RB2 range with some upside. I would like him in that Damian Harris, Damian Williams range, if that is the case, against a bottom 10 San Francisco rushing defense. Next up, we move to Marvin Jones. We talked already in our wide receiver rankings video about Laviska Shenault and that great matchup with Tennessee. Marvin Jones also deserves a mention. He is going to see increased targets with DJ Chark sitting out with that ankle fracture. Dalvin Cook looks like he is going to be a game time decision for my Minnesota Vikings. And I would usually say if he starts for the Vikings, he starts for you. But we did see last week where he ended up suiting up against Cleveland and had just 9 carries for 34 yards. I think there's certainly risk. Now, if he were to sit, this would shoot Alexander Mattison up to our RB11. He would slide in right behind players like Najee Harris and Austin Eckler. We move to Denver, where Courtland Sutton rolled his ankle in practice on Friday, and he's been added to the injury report late. He now slides down our list behind players like Kenny Golladay and Hunter Renfrow, and joins his teammate Tim Patrick in that risky flex option range. Noah Fant gets a little bit of a boost, and he is our tight end 7 behind Kyle Pitts. They also look likely to get back Teddy Two Gloves, and that is great news considering Drew Lock is no longer throwing them the ball. We're now going to talk about a couple players who, as the week has progressed, I just have liked less. The first is Miles Sanders, and the more I look at this matchup, his recent production and what's going on in Philadelphia, the less I like Sanders. He's fallen from a high-end flex to more of a risky kind of desperation play for me, right next to his teammate, Kenneth Gainwell. Finally, we'll touch on the 49ers backfield with Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon. It looks like Mitchell has been cleared to play. He was a full participant in practice on Friday. Now, this is great news for 49ers fans and horrible news for any owners of a 49ers running back. And that is because with this news, we have no clue how this backfield is going to shake out. I lean towards Mitchell because all the reports are saying that he's the guy when he's back, when he's healthy, but we know that Trey Sermon is going to look to take some of that workload as well. I think it's much safer to keep both of these guys, unfortunately, on your benches. Look for better options until we can get some clarity in what this is actually going to look like. I'm going to end this video by running down players I like in order and also doing it by tiers for you guys to help you figure out what is your ideal lineup this weekend. We'll start at quarterback, and obviously I'm not going to do the top 12s because we know we're starting our studs. We do not get cute. At quarterback, after those 12, it goes Cousins, Sam Darnold, Trey Lance finds himself in that second tier, and then Joe Burrow and Derek Carr. After we get there, we go Ryan Tannehill, Trevor Lawrence, and finally Taylor Bud Lighty. If you don't have one of those top 12 or any of those guys, and they're not available on the waiver wire, check my rankings to see who might be an option for you. The second tier for running backs after the studs starts with Kareem Hunt, the 1B, to Nick Chubb's 1A. I then have Antonio Gibson, and newly added Joe Mixon slides in here right before Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Leonard Fournette. In that next tier, I have Damian Williams and Damian Harris back-to-back before we get to Cordero Patterson, who has jumped up significantly with the news of Calvin Ridley sitting, James Conner, and that is obviously assuming that Chase Edmonds sits, would slide in here, and then we have Chuba Hubbard, and finally Josh Jacobs. Our next tier down would start with Latavius Murray, who is the #1 back for now in Baltimore, followed by Jamal Williams and Zach Moss. I then would just put back-to-back those Broncos running backs I prefer due to his production thus far, Melvin Gordon III, but Javonte Williams is fine as well. And then we have Tony Pollard against the Giants. And finally, Mike Davis, who should also see increased touches in the Atlanta offense. That final tier and kind of the desperation plays, if you will, starts with Miles Sanders and then Devin Singletary. We put the 49ers backs back to back here. Obviously, Mitchell is my preference. And then A.J. Dillon, followed by Michael Carter, and finally Kenneth Gainwell. As we move to our wide receivers, we already talked about adding both A.J. Brown and Jamar Chase to that elite list. So after that, in the first tier, after our studs, we have Chris Godwin, Adam Thielen, Amari Cooper, and we add our second Bucks wide receiver here in Mike Evans. We take a step down and now go to Marquise Brown, Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson, and newly added T. Higgins slides in right before Antonio Brown, and finally Corey Davis. The next tier down starts with Brandon Cooks, who, while we don't love the matchup, know he's going to get volume. He's followed by Emmanuel Sanders, who we love in a matchup against the Chiefs. And then we have Marvin Jones, who's been newly added right next to his teammate, Laviska Shenault. After Shenault, we have Jacoby Myers. And finally, Allen Robinson still remains in this tier that is right out of the desperation one. Our final tier of players starts with Odell Beckham Jr. Jalen Waddle is next and gets a little bit of a boost with that injury to Devontae Parker. Kenny Golladay finds himself next, and then it's Hunter Renfrow. Cortland Sutton falls all the way down here, and then Devontae Parker, who have both fallen since our initial rankings. Finally, Darnell Mooney sneaks in. He gets a slight boost to the news of Justin Fields starting. Finally, we're going to move to our tight ends. And it's pretty simple with the top three. We know we have Kelsey, Waller, and TJ Hawkinson, followed closely by Mark Andrews. After that, Mike Gesicki all the way up as our fifth best start because of the matchup with the Bucks. Kyle Pitts jumps all the way up to 6 now, and Noah Fant gets an upgrade due to the Cortland Sutton news and the news that Teddy Bridgewater is going to potentially start. Finally, we have Dawson Knox, and Dalton Schultz is the last tight end on that tier. If you're looking for something lower than that, I have Tyler Conklin, then Robert Tonyan, and finally Jared Cook. And if you don't have any of those guys, you're in a real desperate spot. I still like Max Williams enough to put him here, and finally Evan Ingram. Please comment or leave any start-sit questions down below for me. I would love to get back to you before kickoff on Sunday. And that is all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're new or haven't done it yet, please like and subscribe. Helps me do what I love and bring you content that you love. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abraham Opat. We'll see you next time.